Welcome to Where's My Sandal podcast, where four Hmong men explore societal and cultural issues. This is Zhang.
This is Shi.
This is Juan.
This is Meng.
Welcome to our podcast.
So today we're talking about the recent murder-suicide cases that have been happening around the country, right? So especially ones that stick out or ones that we've heard about is the one that happened today in South Fresno. So they haven't released if it was Hmong people specifically, but obviously there's been a handful of Hmong cases of murder-suicide with Hmong people in it, right? So the one in Little Chute, the one in New Brighton, and then we also heard about one in Michigan. Mm-hmm. So again, like we were talking about earlier, these are not isolated to the Hmong community, but this is also something that happens in our community, and we don't talk about. Our leaders don't talk about it, and it's constantly happening. So this is part of the reason why I think we want to talk about this issue, is to kind of give some ground and highlight to what our perspectives are or what we think about it as young Hmong men.
And I think part of it is just really like we are not experts at anything really. It's more just a conversation because there isn't a conversation about it.
I mean, even for me, I've heard about murder-suicides in the Hmong community since I was young, and kind of go off of what you said, Meng, it's like we really don't talk about it. It's almost like the family was just pushed to the edge somehow, shape, or form. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I remember my folks would be when we wouldn't listen. My folks would be like, if you don't listen, don't you see what happened to that family? You want that to happen to us? You want me to go nuts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Use that as an example.
Yeah, and so like it was kind of like a scare tactic for their parents for their kids. So I remember like that very vividly.
Or even worse, tactics for wives to behave.
Oh yeah, there's that too. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Meaning like husbands use that to put fear into their wives or maintain control in the relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not used on their wives, I feel like it's used on themselves. Like this is something that I can do.
Yeah, and so something that I've heard from other people who talked about this issue already is kind of the idea of absolutely this is rooted in toxic masculinity, I think, right?
Yep.
But another part of it is it's rooted in our culture, where our culture enables it, right? Like our patriarchal society, it enables men to do these things and get away with it. So, do you guys want to touch base on that or give perspective?
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of the patriarchal, because a lot of the time, the clan or the family, especially the male patriarch, they tend to blame the spouse, the wife, who, okay, what did they do wrong that you get killed or you get abused, right? And like I said, it was like when I told the events to my dad, right, and then the first thing my dad asked instead was, well, did she cheat on him? It's like, so you rather care about what she did wrong, like cheat on him, than get killed? Like, I don't know about you, but
Well, the thing is, a lot of spouses cheat on each other, but they don't always kill each other, or there's not always a murder-suicide, Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think the question is why does it happen to some and not others? And the thing is, what exactly is going on? And also, I think what isn't being really talked about is how the community reacts to it afterwards. And whereas like it just kept quiet, it's very shameful. The family doesn't want like most often, at least in my experience I've seen, it's like they just pretend like it never happened, right? And it's really sad, it's really tragic. We have funerals and things like that, but then no one ever really talks about it. No one ever really reaches out to the surviving family members, if there are any, to say, hey, how are you guys doing? Like there's really no healing or any sort of like follow-up with the Hmong community afterwards. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
I think you bring up a really good point, because so a lot of what you're saying, I feel like it sounds like we don't know how to deal with trauma, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that Hmong people have been trying to navigate and heal from, just through different generations. But absolutely, I feel like just growing up in the 90s and 2000s, right? Like, I guess I would call this like the 1.5, 2.0 generation. I feel like a lot of what we were taught was, just learn from it, right? Where, like, if you don't know how to first address your emotions or the impact of an event as tragic as a murder-suicide, how do you learn from that and how do you grow from that, right? That just kind of leaves you scarred and traumatized, and you don't really know how to go about that.
I got something, but it's kind of like far from what you guys are talking about.
Well,
So,
just bring it up.
well, I mean, so I guess one kind of idea that I was thinking about is, what pushes Hmong men to that point where, they want to do that. And so, just, I'm not saying that I know, how Hmong men were in Laos and in Thailand, and if that happens more frequently or not, but just from assumptions, really, like, how Hmong men lose control, like, of their power, over women. And so in America, that is, so with Western, I guess, policies or laws, it causes men to lose power, whether it's maybe just control over women or maybe just like influence over women, and women have more independence. And so, I don't know, something along those lines where maybe a lot of times Hmong men and Hmong culture of Hmong men haven't really found a place to, I guess, deal or survive in this new, in America. I don't know, something along those lines.
No, I think you bring up a good point in that it's with their wives, but it's also with their kids. Because like I can only think about myself and my shoes, is that like when you grow up here, you go to school and like you learn English and you go to like things like that. But the thing is, you don't ever really get to know your dad, especially if they work like 9 to 5 or they work like rotating 12s, and every weekend they're like, bao na ho, things like that. It's like you really get disconnected from your family, I feel like. Because as you were saying that, I was really thinking to myself, like, would I ever do that? And I don't know. Born here, like, I've kind of been, I feel like being a Hmong American, you're kind of, you kind of feel a sense of belonging here, even if it's only halfway. Whereas I feel like a lot of the older generation, like my dad and like possibly your dads, they feel like this really isn't their country, And I wonder how much of that has to do with it, because, like, I feel that whenever I hear Hmong family murder suicide, I always assume older people. I never assume younger people. Is that fair, or?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, going back to what I was thinking about, like, I think a lot of times the Hmong men, they lose their, especially because, it's America, and it's not perfect, but women, especially, I think, women of color, that have more independence or freedom than a lot of patriarchal cultures, such as Hmong culture, where men are usually in control of everything. And so I guess to that point, when men, they lose their power and they don't know how to deal with it, it pushes to the edge where they would commit a murder suicide. I guess that's just my reasoning behind it, but it could be wrong.
So jumping back a little bit too, to what Juan was saying earlier, I think something else that isn't addressed or isn't looked at, or at least I haven't heard yet about, it's something pretty obvious though, right? Like, Asian men, they're emasculated in this country. So especially when you're a Hmong man and you're coming from a country where you're in charge of a lot of things, or you're the leader of a clan, or you're a leader of your village. You come to America, right? You lose that sense of power. You lose that sense of authority or importance, right?
Yeah.
I think that's really important to Hmong culture, and especially Hmong men.
Yeah.
We even see that nowadays, where everyone's shitu, right? Everyone's competing to be a leader, or like ono, right?
Dude, I hate that. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to keep on.
But that's all we hear about, right? Is the OGs, even now, like the OGs will be like, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting thought, because I feel like a lot of younger Hmong men in our generation, people feel that we don't care about our culture, which I think that we care a lot about it. It's just that we don't have an avenue, or we feel like we don't have an outlet to express how we feel about it, or we're not included in the culture. So absolutely, I think we care, but then in the older generation's perspective, I think that this is really important to them, right? And when they came to America, basically you're on welfare, right? So you're relying on other people, and Hmong people are very independent. they don't want to rely on people.
Prideful.
They're very prideful.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree. That
Yep.
people can say that's opinionated, but I think
Prideful and
many of us agree
yeah.
on that. But yeah, I think that's a really important thing to note down, right? And absolutely also want to address this as well. We're not trying to make an excuse for these murder suicides, right? That comes off sounding like that, but I think a lot of it is delving into
Dissecting the reasons.
Right.
Yeah, dissecting like what's happening in the brain of Hmong men,
Why they do it.
why they commit these crimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of the older generation men I feel like they're really isolated. Like I've had a few conversations about like friendships or even like close connections with other Hmong men, and it's really weird. It's very few that have actually real good friends, where they'll come visit them and they're just, it's not or no how it's like, yeah, I just came to visit you because we're friends.
Yeah.
I just came to hang out, kick it with you. It's never really like that. Like I've actually rarely ever seen, at least with my family, with my dad and them. And if it's like more business or politics related, it's like I really noticed that a lot when I came up here to like Minnesota. Was there's a rat race up here with the Hmong OG community, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, my dad's part of
the
those.
weirdest thing ever. Whereas like you said, go she say
Yep.
and I'm just like, dude, like for us younger folks, it's like, dude, none of that is even relevant to us. Like, what do you guys even do?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about. Like, that's how they stay or feel important, right? Because
They feel valued.
Yeah,
they
feel valued.
Relevant.
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
Community.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I think Minnesota is pretty different from everywhere, but I mean, there are some similarities because there is such a big community here. So
yeah. So I guess going back to like Hmong men being in control, like for instance, if a Hmong man, if let's say if his wife was to cheat on him, he would feel not just because she cheated on him that he's losing control, but also that it hurts his pride so much that he would rather die and also, I guess, take revenge, or to the point where he doesn't know how to cope with it, and the only way he feels that he can deal with it is just take it out.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like ultimately it's kind of like having power, ownership over her. Because,
maybe power too, and maybe
Yeah.
pride. I think that plays a lot of part of it. It hurts the pride so much that they don't know how to cope with it, and they think the only way is to end their life, and also by taking ownership, their partner's lives.
So I mean, obviously I think you brought something up there that is a little bit different. Is that
Yeah.
why isn't it just suicide, and why is it a murder suicide?
Yeah, so both of them plays a part.
So
Yeah.
I think that is something that we should probably dig into a little bit more. Why is it important for why is it always a murder and then a suicide? Why do we not see as suicides more often than just murder suicides? You know what I mean?
So this is just my opinion and perspective, but I feel like in Hmong culture, right, this is from a pretty ignorant Hmong American young man's perspective, but I feel like in Hmong culture, right, like in my opinion, it's a very beautiful culture, and I think right, like you get married and you're a couple.
Mhm.
I think it's very beautiful, right, and it's not meant to be patriarchal. It's not meant to be where the man controls the relationship all the time. But I think the way in which Hmong men interpret it, right, I think it has a lot to do with power, right?
Yes, it does.
When it comes down to anything in terms of like domestic violence or even like sexual abuse and rape, a lot of it is centered around power, right? It's men needing to feel powerful, in control. So, in my perspective, I feel like when it comes to that, yeah, go ahead.
Not to cut you, but
Go ahead.
I think one of the parts where, so like what Jean said, why murder and suicide, or why suicide and murder? Definitely the power plays a part in the action of doing it, but I think the part where they murder the other person is really like the pride part, where it hurts the pride. So I just wanted to say that.
No, absolutely, I
Yeah.
agree. I think a lot of it is rooted in pride, right?
Yeah.
But like, why is that pride being hurt? It's
Yeah.
because they're feeling like they're disempowered.
Right.
Yes.
And so the ultimate act of power is to control their partner's fate and their own fate, right?
Oh, true.
That's a power. That's a power move, right?
That's a huge power move.
Nobody can do anything because I'm the one making the final move. So that's, in my perspective, at least, I think that's why a lot of men default to that situation. I also think something that we kind of touched a little bit about earlier is kind of that, right? So if we're going to talk about toxic masculinity, what is that? That's a culture, right? So it's that you have a lot of pressure because it's not just coming from you as an individual, right? If we were just all individuals and we were not influenced by other men, honestly, I don't think toxic masculinity would exist, right? We would just be people.
Yeah.
But toxic masculinity is a culture, so it means it's a collective ideology, thought framework, or, it's something that influences the way that we behave and act, right? So Hmong men, they have a lot of pressure to fit in. So, you can be a Hmong man who, is very respectful, really kind towards your wife. You don't demand or command her to do a lot of things. But then, right? Your family, they'll be like, oh, right?
Don't let her talk to you like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So, like, why are you being such a woman, right? So, for a lot of Hmong men, goes back to the one thing. It hurts their pride, right? And it also feels like they're disempowered because they're feeling like, wow, like, I'm not respected by my brothers, right? And that's kind of what a lot of
because of my wife.
Because of my wife.
Because of my wife,
yes.
right?
So, I think that's something that maybe we could touch on a little bit more too.
Yeah, I mean, wife, and your kids. Even
I see.
Because like the pressure really comes down to you if your family's not doing quote unquote well, or if they're not succeeding, then it actually falls back on you as a father.
Yeah.
At least that's how the community sees it.
Absolutely.
So.
And I guess along with everything, like, it goes back to the not knowing how to deal with the trauma and pretty much like how to process those stuff. And so that's what triggers the real quick, I don't know, our decision of, murder and suicide.
Well, yeah, because I feel like growing up, as brothers or as a son to my dad, we never talk about that stuff. And then when I'm confronted or presented with that situation, and then my pride gets hurt, what am I supposed to do, right? I just learn from, like Megan said, the collective, the community.
We're fed all these stuff about masculinity. That's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a little bit off topic for me, but like it's like kind of monkey see, monkey do for us, at least for Hmong Americans. Is that we see our parents or our dads do certain things. And then we just kind of like, I don't know, am I supposed to do that too? Or because like for me, like I had a huge blowout argument with my dad once about, how come like, you don't look at me and my brother or my other brother, how come you rely on my other brother so much when they're never there? And then my dad was like, oh, it's because you're not married yet. So I don't want to bother you. I'm just like, what the hell? Like that, I don't know what that means. Like I go with you everywhere to meet like the family to Onaha. I go with you and like I just thought that's what you wanted. I didn't know if there was any more, any less, or if there's more I should be doing. And like there's really like no sense of direction for us. And I'm assuming a lot of it was absorbed for them growing up. It was just like absorbed from watching each other. And so for us, it's kind of like we're absorbing it too. But it's kind of like for us, just monkey see, monkey do. We have no idea what the hell they're doing or what actually the right way is. So I mean, it's really convoluted a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, going back for the part where it's it's kind of basically like, you're not married, and so
you like
your value is lower.
40 years old, and like you could be super successful as far as financially and stuff, but in the community's eyes, you're still a child.
So absolutely, but to continue on, right? To go back to our topic, don't you think that's part of the pressure into why Hmong men feel like they need to be something or act a certain way, right? Because once you get married and once you have a wife, your your community, they're looking to you, right? And they're treating you like a man now. You have all these responsibilities and all these burdens on your shoulder. So for a lot of men, right, like that's something that's hard to handle, I think. They don't know how to handle that. So a lot of times, they get frustrated and they lash out on their family.
Yeah.
There's, because there's no, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, no orientation for us to, okay, so now that you reach the point of I mean, if you listen carefully to the, yes, they do teach you how, they do tell you how to be a better, but then for us
Half our
generation,
generation doesn't really
does not listen to any of that,
Part of it is we just don't have the time,
Yeah, we don't have time to it.
And the expectation is that we learn on our own, and that we have time to learn. Yes. But the reality is that we don't have the time, and our way of learning is different from how our parents may have learned. We're supposed to go go beg people to teach us, and we're supposed to basically sit there and watch and listen, but in our reality we don't have that time, and our way of learning is that person wants to teach us, then we'll learn.
Like, just listening to talk about like just the community there, I think it's really tough because you can't really do anything on your own in the Hmong community. Like, culturally, if you want to get married, like when you get married, the bride and groom, you literally do nothing. The families do everything. So if you're like an orphan and you don't have a family and you want to get married, like there's really like almost like nothing you can do if your family doesn't like you, or like a funeral, like that's like I think that's really tough, because even if like you wanted to get away from the toxic masculinity, like sometimes you have to buy in just so you can get the help you need to, so you can, like something as basic as getting married, or like if you had someone pass away, if you don't have like the I guess the network, and if
respect.
Well, yeah, I mean essentially that's what it is. If no one really respects you, then no one's gonna teach you, no one's gonna really help you do anything. You really can't be successful in life as a Hmong man if you don't buy into some of the bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be successful if you don't drink beer.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So drinking is definitely a big part of the culture.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just gonna connect to what Zhang just said. So you can't be a successful Hmong man unless you excommunicate yourself from the community, right? I mean, we see a lot of younger Hmong people do that, where they kind of shut themselves out from the community because they've been exiled by their kuti, or they just feel like it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah.
And right, that doesn't feel like that's the answer either.
Yeah.
Because then you just become mika, right? You just go to be a white person.
Or rejected white.
Essentially, that's what the OGs say. And the thing is, like, when it comes time to get married, like I've had a couple buddies that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's time to get married," and then they go like talk to their girlfriend's parents, and they're like, "Oh, who's your mom and dad? Who's your metakuti?" And he's like, "I haven't talked to him in like 10 years," and it's like, well, this isn't gonna work out well, And it's not even like you; it's like your girlfriend's like parents and stuff. They're all like, if they buy into it, then you're kind of screwed too.
Yeah, that's really true. So I'm sorry, I feel like I keep sidetracking the conversation, but I just want to kind of transition it to a thought that I had earlier. So I was thinking that with Hmong men, right? Okay, so this goes back to what Jean said earlier. Jean said that we see a lot of these cases in the older generation, right?
Yeah.
But I think a couple of the cases that just happened, right? They're relatively younger people, right? They're in their 30s, 40s, 50s. I would consider that younger.
Yeah.
I would feel like that's
30s,
still
40s.
Yeah, I feel like that's still like Gen 1 to 1.5.
Yeah.
Which is people in our age, right? Because some of us are 30 already, and the other two of us are in our late 20s. So that's very close to us, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to touch base back to that, right? I think that our generation, whatever we want to call that, I guess we're millennials, if we're going to talk about like a white perspective or white terms. I feel like our generation, right, Bena, we don't understand Hmong culture. So what we absorb is a lot of the toxic traits.
Yeah.
And we don't learn the value behind it, right?
Yeah.
So like if you look at like the way we drink and then we try to act like we're doing cultural things, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right?
That's so funny, dude.
I mean, it is that, but I do see people who are older and who do actually understand, and they still kind of act that way too, which is using. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh well, I think like I totally get where you're coming from, because the thing is, like, I've had people my age who kind of know how to like go into the drinking thing.
Absolutely.
Like, people know how to drink, and
yeah,
you really feel good. Like, they know how to bring people together, where I feel like that's how you're supposed to do it. And I've seen people just bully each other with, "Oh, if you don't drink this, that's disrespect." Like, literally, like people have killed each other over, like, not understanding what, like, drinking etiquette. And like you said, it goes a lot back to like just toxic masculinity,
Yeah,
but
it does.
it's where we really lose the value of the actions that we're doing. Like the action we see, monkey see, monkey do. We see the action, but we have no idea what the hell is going on underneath. Like how the person is feeling or the underlying messages that really connect the two people.
So yeah, and I want us to understand that I'm not saying that this is calling out just our generation, right? But this is including our generation and calling out the older generation, because I feel like we all participate in patriarchy. We participate in toxic masculinity, whether we want to admit it or not, right? These are things that, and it's not like it's a conscious decision, right? These are it's like culture, right? It's the way you're socialized and you do these things without thinking about them. But I think if we're more mindful about it and we talk about these things more often, we make it normal to talk about it, we can call each other out, right? We can call other people out and be better. At least that's the hope.
At least, yeah, I mean, that's the hope that just moving forward, us as Hmong men who, I guess, for in a way, kind of understand this a little bit more, or be more aware of this Hmong toxic masculinity. How do we, as Hmong men, hold our other Hmong men, our fellow Hmong men, accountability so that things like this doesn't happen again, right? It's like,
I think. Well, I just had a thought when you said that, was that I think because a lot of the things that we as a community value is very specific things, especially among men. But the thing is, like, we don't value and congratulate each other on the things that we should be doing. Like, so a good example is, hey, when your daughter accidentally gets pregnant or something, you should be really happy that, hey, you're about to be a grandpa or something like that, But instead, we're so worried about bongjimo, that you failed as a dad, things like that. Like, yeah, like there are some concerns like that too, but we never really be like, hey, on the bright side, you're gonna be a grandpa, bro. Like,
true, yeah.
that's something to be happy about. You're gonna have grandkids, and that's something that you should be happy about. Besides, like, going back, I was reading a book the other day about like the modern gentleman, or like modern day warrior or something like that. And a lot of times, like, men are, we emphasize on destruction and violence and like the toxic part of masculinity, but not just that, but we're also builders. We're supporters. We're fathers. We're brothers. But we never emphasize, hey, Hmong men could be brothers too. How do you treat your sisters? Like things like, we never have conversations like that. You can be more than just.
Well, we do.
Oh yeah,
well,
I mean,
we do. Yeah, we do.
But like, I think
on average.
So going back to where, how do we hold each other accountable? I think we need to start calling each other out on the stupid stuff, like the really obvious stuff, like that's toxic. But also, like, really start supporting each other in the basic stuff that is human. Like, hey, you are a single dad or whatever, or I know you got someone pregnant, but you're still around, and you guys aren't even together. That you should get congratulated. You're being a good dad.
Yeah, because in a way we have to start recognizing that first. Okay, there's bad toxic masculinity, and for us to change the culture, we have to recognize it first.
Yeah.
Within each other, and then from there, I think just understanding and recognizing and calling each other out, and then, but then I guess it kind of goes to the point. What happens when someone you really like, you really respect, but still acts that way, no matter how much you call out, right?
Cut them off.
Cut them off, right? Basically.
I'm just kidding. Well, it depends, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to analyze your relationship with that person, right? If you feel like they're worth that work, because I'm gonna call it work. It's literally work. If you're trying to, because I mean, if you think about it, you're re-educating someone, right?
Yeah,
that's work.
You're actively doing something.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to consider if that work is worth your time and your efforts. Because if you feel like it's a lost cause, then you cut them off, right? And it's not always healthy for you either, as a person who's trying to convince people or change people. But if you feel like that's a person who's worth working on, then absolutely, like, work on that person.
And I think it's really hard for one person to change a culture. Just like, if there are people who I'll be okay calling out, and there'll be some people where I'm like, I probably would just like distance myself away from them versus even calling them out. Because, if it's that bad, you never know what they would do too. You know.
Yeah.
Or lash out.
Well, I think a lot of times like I don't even know if I would approach an older,
Right.
you know,
And it's like
person.
you versus a culture, and you're just one person. I mean, obviously, at that point.
Yeah, there's that plus for me. I don't really feel like they'd be very receptive.
Right.
Because there's also that age gap where they're like, oh, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Age gap, other people around, you might make them lose face, you know.
Plus, I mean, they're like, I feel like a lot of the networks and connections a lot of the older Hmong men have is just going to support them in being the way they are.
Right,
versus,
exactly. That's why I said just you versus a culture, a whole culture of it.
Yeah, and so, I don't know.
So this sounds really bad, but, you know, like I've thought about these things for a long time, but, you know, honestly, part of it is we have to keep the parts of our culture that we think are good.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
cut the other
we
ones
have
out.
to let things die out. That's the reality, right? So we see a lot. I saw a post the other day. That was really cool. I liked it a lot, at least. It said something around the lines of like your ultimate goal in life should be to find your toxic traits and remove those so that doesn't carry on in your family. Something like that. I'm totally butchering it, so I apologize. but it was a really good quote, right? It's like you're finding the toxic traits in your family, and you're gonna stop them from continuing on. And I think that's really valuable, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
that's really wise words.
Yep, definitely really wise words, but it's hard to do, right? I mean, but I think something that Jean said earlier is, you know, it's a really, I guess, a good step to help take away those negative traits which is, you know, adding in good stuff. Like,
Yeah, that you're already doing.
yeah, that you're already doing. Just at least acknowledge those stuff.
Yeah, I think for me and like you, so I was just talking to my girlfriend the other day about this, and you came up. We were like, this one time someone told me who I should be, and I totally flipped out and I got triggered. Remember? And you were like, dude, I noticed that about you a lot. It's like what? That you get really triggered. Like you never really get angry until someone tries to tell you who you are, and you get like you literally like snap. And I was like, dude, I do that. And it goes back to this, is that like only I can be who I want to be.
Yeah.
Because when someone tries to tell me who I should,
Yeah,
or should not
exactly.
be, I get triggered. I have no idea why. But I think it goes back to like what we're talking about here. It's that I've worked really hard on not putting myself in a box.
Yeah.
It's because I think when you put yourself in a box, it really limits you from growing. And so like it's hard to change the community, but I think a good place to start is looking at yourself. And that it goes back to what you said.
It's inside out, outside in.
Patting yourself on the back for doing the shit that is like fucking human, you know? Like one of the things that I started learning to do was calling my buddies up and on their birthdays and just having a talk on the phone. But hey, happy birthday, you know, and things like. I feel like that's part of what isn't toxic, but a lot of times we don't, as guys in general, we don't get recognized for that, for being a good friend, you know, to each other. I don't know, stuff like trying to bust each other's balls all the time.
Yeah, so, I mean, we're going to get a little personal here, but I feel like, you know, a lot of, I guess we can call it healthy masculinity, right? Some people call it higher masculinity. I've heard a lot of different terms for it.
Okay.
But, right, like, if we're going to talk about, like, toxic masculinity, I guess we would call this, like, healthy masculinity, or just, you know, the good parts of masculinity. I feel like I learned a lot of that from you, at least through when we were doing, like, YLC, because before that, right, like, I feel like I was a pretty toxic person, pretty ignorant. But then also, like, a lot of that is you don't see it modeled, right? You don't see, growing up, right, you don't get that kind of a role model who shows you what healthy masculinity looks like. Shows you, hey, man, how's it going, right? Someone who will give you a hug as a man, right?
Yeah.
I think as men, we're so afraid to touch each other besides shaking hands.
Yeah.
But then, like, you're, like, one of the first guys to give me a hug. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is cool. This is okay, right?
Yeah.
And part of that is being able to get over a lot of these social norms or social ideologies that are built into our thoughts, right? And this is like totally a Western thing, right? Because like in Asia and in Hmong culture, it's cool for guys to like hug and hold hands.
Yep.
Like that's totally normal, right? Like I look at pictures of like my OGs and like back in the day when they took like pictures,
holding hands.
and in their flare pants, they'd be holding hands and they'd be like hugging each other. Like that's dope, right? But then like. It's homophobia, right? If we're going to talk about what it is.
Yeah.
A lot of that is rooted in Western culture. I'm not saying that doesn't exist in Hmong culture, but I think, like, at least when we're talking about, like, physical touch, that's a real Western thing, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, that can be a whole topic in itself. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and I think another part I wanted to touch upon like in terms of how we can improve this. I think just start listening to our sisters, our moms, our wives, and especially when they see, because we're the ones privileged, right? And most of the time we're not going to see our own toxic masculinity. So for them to tell us, instead of being like super defensive, maybe that's a way we can start looking at ourselves, right?
Just shut up and listen, and
Yeah.
actually like listen and take in what they're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing, right, is this. A lot of OGs are not gonna like this, but even in our generation, I feel like a lot of Hmong men our age aren't gonna like this. But I think women need to lead. Like we're in a time now where Hmong men just need to take a step back, and right, like I shared my concern with you guys before, right? Like it's kind of silly that we're four Hmong guys talking, because I feel like Hmong men talk a lot, but I also think we're sharing like a different perspective. But ultimately at the end, I feel like it's time for Hmong women to take lead, take charge, right? And for us to be that pedestal to support our
support
sisters,
it,
right?
instead of
to support Hmong women,
Yeah.
right?
I
Just
think-
because they're human and they're smart.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Well, I think that's important because it's especially in our community, if a Hmong woman is really like out there and she's really active, then she's being loud and she's just complaining and she's just like But for us to be like, no, you guys need to listen to her. Right. We still like have our masculinity for them to like listen to us, but like that's kind of like our role. I feel like because we was like, dude, why aren't you freaking listening to her? She's like more freaking qualified than I am. But you guys are listening to me, and all I'm telling you to do is just listen to her.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, like, even, not in Hmong culture, just women in general, like, men are scared of women in power, and it's like they don't know how to handle it. Another part I was going to say is, I actually do think a lot of Hmong women are leading the way, just not leading the way in the Hmong arena, which is because Hmong men are not giving them the space.
Yeah, they're not allowing it.
But I do definitely think that Hmong women are leading the way in the, I guess, non-Hmong arena, or in whatever arena that they can. They're definitely more progressive than Hmong men are.
Yep.
And so, but, going back to that, just definitely I think more Hmong men need to support them in whatever arena they can work in, and also let them work in the Hmong arena.
Well, I think this is where sexism hurts us, right? We just think that sexism hurts women, but this is where sexism hurts us as a community. So if the Hmong community is really just dominantly led by Hmong men, and they're not leaving any space for Hmong women, a lot of freaking strong and very qualified and powerful women are going to try to create change, and no one's going to fucking listen in the Hmong community. And guess what they're going to do? Fuck you guys.
Different community.
Go outside the Hmong community.
Yep.
And guess what? We're losing tons of resources and leadership and
Talent.
dude, our community is gonna sit still. It's not good for us.
And then eventually, the Hmong culture will be gone
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
And the thing is, like, it's not like Hmong women don't want to stay. They do, but there's just no space for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why the hell would they stay? It doesn't make any sense. If they're gonna stay here and just like not be listened to, then it's like screw it. Like we're in the United States now, and I could take, my voice somewhere else.
And that's valid.
And then
Absolutely valid.
and to bring that back to the murder suicides, that's probably why Hmong men do that also, is because Hmong women are able to have different outlets of living, and also that is exactly why masculinity hurts us, because especially toxic masculinity, is because we think that's the only way for us. Well, there's so many different outlets for us to live, and so many different ways for us to live.
I mean, right? So we could branch off so many other topics like divorce, right?
Yeah.
That's a taboo in our culture, but that's also something that Hmong people need to learn how to understand and move on with, because sometimes that's healthier, right?
Yeah,
Two
sometimes
people
that's-
staying together in a toxic relationship.
I rather them divorced than killing each other.
Absolutely,
basically,
right? Because
or wait until the husband kills the wife. so.
absolutely, because I mean, at the end of the day, right? Some people, they're not compatible. That's the reality.
Yep.
It's better to not be together then, right?
I think another topic I wanted to talk about was, which was also interesting. I asked my dad because I wanted to understand. Okay, so what happens about like funerals now, then, right? So if you just find out that so uncle just killed your aunt. So how is the funeral going to still be normal? Because I wouldn't know. Because imagine being the family of the wife, right? If you're so mad at the husband already, or
Yeah.
your brother-in-law, will you still, I don't know, do the funeral? Did you not go to, or?
I'm sorry. Could you explain normal for?
Oh,
'cause, like, you know, some
yeah,
people
yeah,
don't
like
understand, what normal is, or
like
whose responsibilities.
yeah,
things are.
like traditional Hmong culture of funerals, like because there's certain roles. If you get asked to if you get asked to do the roles, will you accept it? Should you accept it? And what if you still have hatred? It's like, do you still celebrate their life, or do you just leave it to the moment that they kill somebody? So my dad just said that the funeral will still happen, but in terms of understanding the hatred or people who don't want to do it or anything, that just comes down to the clan, individual cases. That's the only answer I got from him, at least, because I think it's still new, in a way, how to deal with it. I don't know.
Damn, so it's like, dude, that's pretty fucked up. So it's like, yeah, we'll still get the funeral done, but as far as like, if we understand why the person's pissed. It's like, what the fuck?
I don't know, no, because I want to know. I was like, will you still do the funeral, and did you do the funeral together? Do you do it separately? What if the husband gets the funeral first before the wife? So
Yeah.
what does that mean to the community, right? Well, what kind of message are you sending out, right? It's like, was the husband more important? But I don't know. It's
Yeah, no.
Should we bury them
That's like a
together?
whole other arena.
Yeah, it's like,
Should
yeah.
we
I don't feel
send
qualified to
them
talk
to the
about.
afterlife together?
It's
If it didn't work in the living world,
Right.
then, yeah, I mean,
But
Yep.
their
Yeah.
papers, they came together. They gotta.
yeah. So we're gonna talk about we're talking about Hmong spirituality now.
Yeah.
I feel like
that
a
goes
much
on. Yeah,
deeper
I think
conversation.
one day we'll have to delve into that. I think
Yeah,
that's
we
very
will,
interesting
yeah.
to me because
I mean-
it changes the way you live your life. Like,
Yeah, it does.
it's just a food for thought. It's just wondering how that will happen after some kind of that kind of tragic event happen.
I think knowing Hmong culture, they're gonna treat it as like a normal funeral where oh yeah, those two, they didn't hate each other or they just
They're gonna act like it was
Yeah.
natural causes. or
so
something.
they're gonna treat it like a natural cause death and do a funeral naturally.
Which is a shame, right? Because that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about like how we don't address trauma. or-
We don't.
We just
Yeah.
throw everything under the rug and act like nothing ever happened.
Because aren't we supposed to learn from it? Yeah, not to happen again.
Yeah, so I mean, it goes back to, as a community, how do we follow up with that, and what do we talk about? And most of the time, it's nope, business as usual. So
So there's, I don't know if you guys want to add anything else, but there's one more thing that I want to add because I feel like it connects to this conversation.
Yeah.
So again, I'm circling it back to our generation because we talked about how it's difficult to call out the older generation, right? And honestly, I feel like, if they're gonna be receptive, and honestly, we're talking mostly in English, but if they're receptive to this, and cool, right? We'll talk about it.
Yep.
But I feel like a lot of what we're addressing, and maybe like the generations that we're gonna be addressing, is people our own age, and then the younger generation. Because I see a lot of and I mean, I'm pretty sure we all see a lot of toxic traits within ourselves, within our peer groups, within younger people after us, right? Like I've worked with high schoolers, I work with college students now. Some of the things I hear about, right? I'm just like, wow, like really, like we're still there. But I wanted to talk about. Yeah, that was a long introduction. I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about this idea of not all Hmong men, right? Because we've been hearing a lot about these issues, right? And especially like with this month being like domestic violence awareness, Hmong sisters post about this, right? They use social media platforms to talk about these issues.
Yeah.
And then you get this barrage of Hmong men
Not all.
who
not
are
all
just
men.
very hurt.
Not all Hmong men.
And they come out with not all Hmong men. So if you guys, what are your thoughts on that, right? And what do you think?
I think it's kind of like the first act of defense against their own masculinity, right? It's just like, oh, I don't do that.
Well,
it's like
I mean, I wouldn't just say masculinity. It's just defense in general, right?
defense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Defense,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, that'd be my first reaction.
Yeah.
What the fuck? I don't do that.
Yeah. To anything. Yeah.
But like, the truth is, like, dude, we're not talking about me or just me.
Yeah.
We're talking about us as a community, and then our whole mindset too. Because like a lot of the older Hmong women too, like literally buy into this stuff
Absolutely,
too.
yeah.
So I mean, it's not just us.
They internalize it.
I mean, it's generations.
It's a narrative that we all buy into. Like, like you'll ask your dad about something. He's like, oh, that's just normal, son. That's just like you're asking why the sun rises.
Right.
I was like, I don't know. I'm asking because no one's ever asked it before.
I mean, like for me, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I admit, at one point in my life, that's how it was. Right, the first thing when I hear them say, "Oh, all moment, you need to, do this and this," and then I'm like, "But that's not me." And then it took, I have to admit, took time to kind of look into myself. It's like, am I doing anything about it? Because clearly this is still happening, right? So, that's just me personally, in my experience. For me to not see that as not also to always constantly defend myself now, because I'm not doing anything to change my other fellow peers.
I think that's why, for me personally, it's kind of nice for us to talk about these things, right? Because, right, a lot of times when I see people talk about these issues, right, I feel like I don't want to take voice away or take stage away from women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially because they are the voices that need to be heard. We should, like Sandal, right? We should be that pedestal, like I was saying earlier. But also, I feel like for us, then, what is our role in social justice? What is our role in these movements? I think our role is to keep each other accountable, right? And we're going to talk about healthy masculinity, right? Accountability is a beautiful trait to have.
I mean, that's part of it. The other part is to really work on ourselves too.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
right? Like, so when you that I guess that's what I was trying to allude to, right? Is like, if we don't talk to each other about these things, we're just working on these things by ourselves.
Yeah,
and we're not getting
definitely.
feedback,
Yeah,
right?
mhm.
So like, I feel like I've been working on these things for a long time, and they eat away at me, right? And I'm just like, wow, I wish I had someone to talk to this about, right? And I mean, like, we do talk about it here and there, right? But it's not like we make a conscious effort to ever really talk about these
Sit
things.
down and talk about it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, just for me personally, like, anytime I'm trying to address my own privileges, because it's whenever you have a privilege, you're blind to it. You can't really see it, right? And so within our community, like toxic masculinity is just prevalent. And so whenever I'm trying to address something that I can't see, I try to think of ways about how this actually hurts me, or the pressures that I feel, but never really question why I feel those pressures to behave a certain way, or I feel like it's my responsibility to be X, Y, Z, in like this relationship or this relationship. I can't tell my friend I'm scared to do this or that or whatever. Like all the pressures that you've had growing up, you just have to start addressing it. Why did I ever feel like that? It was because I'm a Hmong man. I can't voice those things, And so like because of the way it's structured now, that's how toxic Hmong masculine hurts you. Is that you can't even be yourself. Like the emotions that you feel and the way you look at yourself or the way you value yourself, you can't even value yourself in the way that you want to, because there's so many different pressures coming at you to be a certain way, to put you in a certain box. Accountability is one way, but also like just telling each other and reaching out to your brothers that it's okay to be different. It's okay to give each other hugs. It's okay to, call each other on their birthdays. It's okay not to drink. That's fine. Let's go to the gym. Let's go do something different. Let's go,
Let's create a podcast.
Yeah. Hey, your wife makes more money than you do. That's okay, dude.
It's okay.
You're still a really good dad. You're still a really good uncle. You're still a really good brother. Why do you have to be a breadwinner? It's cool. Things like that. So try to introduce to our other brothers how they can value themselves in ways that they haven't thought about before. I think that's really important. Because if we don't, then we will lean more toward toxic masculinity versus, hey, something that's a little bit more healthy.
Something different.
Something more three-dimensional, something more real.
Narrative.
Yes.
Another narrative.
Yes. So.
But going back to, the whole not all Hmong men, I think we can definitely still, I guess, influence our fellow Hmong peers because seeing other Hmong men put that up, silence is worse. Attempts to silence the Hmong women, right, who are calling us out. And I think if we can help teaching our fellow Hmong men not to start saying that.
Plus, we're not talking about you. We're talking about idea of what a Hmong man is, dude. Yeah. Yeah.
I think absolutely it's hard. I think it's also relevant, right? Like we talked about how we wanted to talk about this because it's relevant. And it's also something that we all think about, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, because we can talk about this for an hour, and definitely I think there's more things that we want to share, but it's gonna, be, tangents and lead on to different conversations. But
Yeah.
I think it's a valuable conversation, and I think it's like what you guys told me last week, right? It's a valuable perspective to have Hmong men with this perspective.
Thanks again for tuning into our podcast, Where's My Sandal? Feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook. Have a great rest of your week.